Okay, so in this video we're going to be completely removing the fuel tank. Now, before you start, depending on what make and model of bike that you've got, the first thing you need to consider is, when you disconnect the fuel pipes, is the fuel going to leak out? Okay, obviously if it has a fuel tap, for example, with an off position, you should be able to close it to off and it won't leak. Yeah, this particular model, and remember this video is for this particular model, so check your own make and model bike. But for this one, I know that the fuel pump, it's not going to leak when I disconnect the pipe. There'll be a small dribble of some residue that's left, but apart from that, it's not going to leak. The second reason you need to consider whether or not you need to drain the tank is how much is in there. Remember, if you've got a full tank and it's a large capacity tank, it's going to be very heavy. Now, fortunate for me, this is on reserve, so I know I'll be able to lift this off. So again, if you've got anything other than a K4, check your manufacturer, check your handbook to see whether or not you need to drain the fuel out. Okay, so to actually get the tank off, first thing we need to do is remove the 2 bolts and remove the rider's seat. Okay, this will allow us to pick the tank up on the pivot and hold it up, and it'll give us access to the bottom of the fuel pump. I do have a video on basically how to do that. It's very, very simple. There's a link in the top of the video and also in the description. Once you got those off, you might consider you might need to take off this rear cowl, because the bolt that the fuel tank pivots on is behind here. You could possibly pull this up out of the way and do it that way, or you might want to remove the whole thing for some other reason. There's also a video linked in the video and linked in the description on how to remove this rear cowl. So we'll get these out, we'll get the seat off, and I'm going to remove the cowl and then we'll proceed from there. So you can see now I've removed the rear tail section, or the rear cowl, and I've also taken out the front bolts as we said before. This is now going to allow me to lift the tank. So I'm going to pull the tank up, I get my little support or my strut, and I put that in place. So now you can see the fuel pump here. You can see all the various wires. You don't need to worry about them. They all run into this harness here and into this white plug. It's got a little connector here that you push down on this side, and then hopefully you should just be able to okay, just a little bit stuck, so I'll just get a small screwdriver to go in and press this down, and once that's in place I should then be able to just pull it apart. Okay, so that's the electrics disconnected from the pump. Just underneath at the back that you can't quite see, I'll just move the camera so you can see this. Okay, so there's the fuel pump just underneath. So if we come in under here, so you can see these 2 pipes here. One is the breather, so this is the breather pipe, and this one is a drain pipe. So if you overfill a petrol station, instead of it spilling, or some of it will spill over your tank possibly, but it will go down the actual filler neck and on the inside of the tank, and then it will actually run down here and drain to the floor, as opposed to draining out of this broken piece and onto your engine. So I need to replace that. So this fuel pipe, this is fairly straightforward as well. If you have a look at it, you can see the grey part and then the black part. Okay, Again, I'll just come in and zoom on this so that you can actually see it a little bit better. So now we've done that, we've got to disconnect the fuel pipe. Okay, so we're disconnecting this fuel pipe. So you can see this sort of grey part and the black part. What happens is there are two little lugs, these grey lugs, one at the top and one underneath at the bottom, and you press those two lugs together and then the black part should come over the little grey clips that you can see. Now there will be a small amount of fuel that might leak out, so I suggest you put a cloth or some paper towel or something just to catch it here. So just to show you now that everything's been removed so you can see it a little bit easier, this is the grey fuel clip, and I'm saying it's, you squeeze these two lugs together, you squeeze those two together and the hose will come over these two clips here. So now we've completely disconnected the fuel pump. Still a little bit of fuel coming out of there, but not much. What we do now is let the fuel tank down again. So once the tank is down, we've got to remove the bolt that runs through here that the tank pivots over. Okay, and if we have a look inside here, it's actually an Allen headed bolt. Okay, so there's no nut at the other end, at least on mine, but check yours just in case it's been modified in some way. So I know that that's 5mm. So I'm turning it, hoping that it will draw itself out. It seems to be sort of stuck at this point. So what I'm going to do is get a very thin screwdriver and just go through the hole at the other end and push the whole thing out. So you can see the bolt head there. So I'll just take the weight of the back of the tank, finish drawing the bolt out. And so now we should be able to grab under the front, grab the rear and lift the whole tank out and out of the way. And there it is, that's the fuel tank removed. Okay, so we're going to put the tank back on now, so just make sure that none of the cables and pipes have come up and are going to get in the way or get trapped by anything. Make sure they're all out of the way and tucked down. I've cleaned the bolt, add a little bit of copper grease onto it. I've put the copper grease down the length of the bolt and onto some of the threads, so that's ready to go in. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the bolt and start it in the hole and make sure that it's flush. So I'm just making sure it's flush, it's not protruding. Okay, and then what we'll do is I'm going to lower the tank down into place, and when I get this lined up I'm going to use my leg just to push the pin in to locate the back end. Okay, so we'll lift the front up so it's not going to touch on the airbox. Now there's a sleeve, you can see it here, there's a sleeve here, So make sure that that sleeve is in, it hasn't dropped out when you remove the tank. And we just lower it roughly into place, and when I'm happy I'm going to press this, give it a jiggle around. Okay, so it started and now it's supporting the back end of the tank. So I'll just gently lay the tank down in position, and then I'll just maneuver this into place and see if we can get it started. And that's it going in now. Okay, and we'll tighten this up. Making sure that everything sort of lines up properly and it's not got anything trapped in between the chassis. So that's now pinched up. You can pinch this up fairly tight because the sleeve will stop it compressing too far, and that acts as the spacer, as the distance between each side of the frame and the chassis. So we're going to tighten this up. I've checked the manual, there is no torque setting for this, so just pinch it up. It doesn't have to be overly tight, you don't want to strip it, and there's no actual load on it apart from the back end of the fuel tank, so you don't have to grunch it right up. So once we've got that pin in and that's located, we're going to check that the tank actually swivels okay and there's no stiffness or restriction to that. And also we're then going to hold the tank up in place with our special tool. By the way, if you do have the original strap, it's normally apparently stored under the rider's seat, under the rear seat, under the passenger seat. It's like a metal rod with a hook in each end or something, and it fits in here and in here. So where the two screws fit in onto the headstock and the chassis, it fits into one of those holes, and then it fits into one of these two holes here. So we're going to reconnect the fuel pump. What you also need to check as well, especially before you actually tighten it all up, there are two sleeves here. You can see I just pull one out there. It's a bit tight because it's been in for a while, so it's stuck. But you can see this sleeve here. Let's bring it up so you can see it a little bit better. That acts as a spacer as well. So you need to make sure that those sleeves and the rubbers are in at the front and haven't dropped out while you've been manhandling the tank, in the same way we made sure the sleeve was still in place at the rear. So in the traditional Haynes method, rebuilding is reversal of removal. So I'm going to get this cloth out the way here. I'm going to find the breather, put the breather on. That just pushes straight on. The hose, the fuel hose, make sure it goes over the grey part of the clip, and be careful when you're putting this part onto the pipe. Make sure that it's centrally located and goes on nice and smoothly. And then once you're happy with that, just keep applying pressure, pushing it on until you hear a click, and then it's in place. Okay, so let's just turn it around here, and there we go. So that's locked in and in place. And then the last thing is just reconnect the plug. That's it. So I'm going to let the tank down again now. I'm going to now going to do is I'm going to just prime it a couple of times And then when I'm happy, we'll just check that it starts and it runs. Okay, so I'm going to lift it and I'm going to just prime it again, and all I'm doing is just having a look to see if I can see any fuel coming out of the fuel connector, which I can't. It's bone dry, so I'm happy with that, and I'm now ready to put the 2 bolts back into the front, and that's the tank fully refitted. Okay, that's all for now. If you liked the video, then leave a like. If you didn't like the video, then leave a dislike. Either way, leave a comment, suggestion, or any questions you may have in the comment section below, and don't forget to subscribe with notifications on so you don't miss any of my future content. Once again, thanks for watching.